All right, hey there, you guys. So, real quick, I wanted to make this video kind of off the reception of the Crimson Desert Metacritic score. So right before this game, reviewed, released, etc., a lot of people were super hyped, me included, for the most part. I remember when I first saw the first trailer, it looked freaking sick and amazing. It looked like one of those games that seemed too good to be true. Um, but as we got closer to the release date, it was a game that I was like, okay, like I'm gonna check it out. But I have like no real full expectations about what I'm going into, right? But there was this huge like, noise happening about this game, a lot of like I think, conspiracies, a lot of like, critiques on how, the reviews being handled, etc. This kind of led to this kind of weird reaction to the overall Metacritic score. So as of this video right now, the Metacritic score is a 78. And for a lot of people, that's a terrible score, right? Personally, me, I played 7 out of 10 games and I have fun with them, right? I don't think 7 out of 10s are bad. I think there's also a lot of 7 out of 10s that I actually really love. So is the 78 a deal breaker for me? No, I still have the game. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna check it out. Um, do whatever it is and figure out what's this game is. I'm curious about it, for better for worse. But the thing that kind of like I think made the 78 so like jerking, so like crazy, that gave this people this reaction of like, what the heck happened here? Like, how did they drop the ball? Blah 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 blah, etc. Right? That's kind of like the sentiment that I see online. And then as we kind of dive deeper, I see a lot of people, praising this game. I see a lot of people saying it's not for them, which is, obviously games are very subjective. But I feel like all of that makes sense. And that's why I'm confused about the reaction to it. Why people are mad, why people are pissed. Personally, unless, I mean, again, I haven't been following the marketing beat, but I feel like all these people who are saying this is going to be game of the year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we're kind of putting their own expectations onto this game. And, you know, when other people don't, reciprocate their own bias about what they wanted, it definitely makes them, kind of act a certain way. And I think that's a lot of what I'm seeing here. I don't think I like a lot of what I think some of the journalists are saying, some of the reviewers are saying, but also some of the fan base. Some of the people that are very pro Crimson Desert, I think, are freaking out a little crazy. I think there's a lot of content creators that are, I don't know, like doing victory laps because they told you so, etc. Like, we knew this game was going to be trash because Cyberpunk was trash and blah blah blah, right? Which, for a lot of people who are trying to compare this situation to Cyberpunk, it's not the same as Cyberpunk. Obviously when the console, versions come out and we play the console versions, we'll have a better, comparison to Cyberpunk as far as how that went. But Cyberpunk was a game that reviewed really well, especially on like PC, etc., because it ran well on the strongest rigs. Crimson Desert is a game that is not reviewing well on even on the PC version because the game isn't meant for everybody. I don't think this game was designed for the general masses. I think there's a lot of people who played games like Witcher who are probably like, hoping this would be the next Witcher for them, right? And personally, when I was, watching a lot of the trailers and stuff like that, sure, this felt like a third person action adventure game in a big open world, but it felt more akin to something like Dragon's Dogma, where the character doesn't really have a whole lot of agency really in the narrative. Obviously, you're like the main character and you're the focal point, it's all about you. But with that being said, it seemed very different from a very narrative driven open world game, at least off my perception. So when I see people saying that like the narrative's not great, the mechanics are hard to and look janky to get into, I mean, the only other game that this team developed, if I'm crazy, Pearl Abyss, I'm pretty sure made just an MMO before this. I don't know what else they worked on, but I think jumping from MMO to like just a single player narrative, I think you are always gonna feel those frictions. If you look at like Final Fantasy 16, for example, of a game that you can see the MMO like layer underneath the game, and I kind of felt like I was kind of expecting all that, right? So I guess the thing that is freaking me out and the things that's jarring me is like why people are let down, you know? Like are you like upset that the developers didn't outright tell you this is gonna be a 7 out of 10? Like, no, no developer of any game is gonna come out there and tell you their game is mid, you know? So I feel like all these people who are out there expecting 10 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, etc., where people just putting their own expectations on the game and being either upset that it didn't deliver or upset at reviewers for not matching their bias. And I think this is the part that I think we as, a gaming audience need to understand that reviews are just reviews. If you're going just based off the reviews about the games you like, then I think you have to really look into a mirror and realize whether or not, you really like gaming at that point. Because there's been tons of games that, yeah, they didn't review well, but I loved them. There's like Wolong Fallen Dynasty is a game that I had a lot of fun with, despite the reviews being pretty middling. And I can say that about a bunch of different games. Like there's tons of games that I really like that other people just did not like. You know, so I think it's one of those type of things that, yes, despite the 78, which I still think again is a good score, I think people really need to look beside themselves. And hey, maybe a 78 isn't something you want to spend $70 on. Sure, I get that. Wait for it to go on sale and then try it out. You don't need to try it on day one, etc. I do think the console thing is strange. I have obviously there's always gonna be the speculation that this game isn't gonna run well on console, which again, I got a PS5 version of this game, so we'll see if it hits. At least performance wise. But just overall, I think this whole like reaction to what is generally a good score is very revealing for a lot of like reviewers and journalists and probably how they review games and maybe the developers should have adjusted to how people would go out reviewing this game because from what it sounds like it sounds weird, right? I see some reviewers that played 150 hours of this game and other reviewers who only played 20 hours of this game and like they're both giving scores, like that's completely different, completely different games that they played at this point. And again, it's not just like people are gonna do what they got to do. Like, again, you play 20 hours of it, it wasn't for you, that's fine. But I think when your job is to review games, I think there should be a strong asterisk as far as like, hey, I really didn't dive deep into this game. This is a game that is asking 100 plus hours of you, and I, did 1/5 of that. So is my review really? It seems pretty based. And obviously all reviews are biased. All reviews are very subjective, and I think that's where the final point that I kind of want to talk about is like these content creators that are celebrating that they told you so. Like that is, I think that is so strange and so weird because yes, this game had a fan base. Yes, there was people expecting this game to be great. Why are you like relishing in the fact that this game didn't review well? That fan base can still very much will like this game. It has nothing to the reviews I think are separate from whether or not the player base likes the game. So why don't you just let them, you didn't tell anyone anything yet. All you said was the game is gonna have issues. And most of the people were talking about how it's gonna have issues on console. Not a lot of people were talking about how it's gonna have issues on PC, which again, from all aspects, performance wise, it doesn't seem to have an issue. It has to do more so with the way that the world is crafted and how we engage with this world and how much this game is asking of you. This game, at least from when I gathered all everyone's comments, it seems like this game is just asking a whole lot of the player. It's asking for a lot of time, and a lot of players don't have the time to give. So I am very curious as far as the overall long term story of Crimson Desert. I think I still think there's a lot that I could be interested in. The thing that concerns me a lot though is like when I hear about the way the game plays and controls, that definitely seems a little awkward to me. With that being said, again, I approach everything with an open mind, and I'm always willing to give everything a shot. So I am very willing to give Crimson Desert a shot. If you guys aren't, that's perfectly fine. If you guys want to wait for, more conversation around the console space, etc., which is perfectly fair. And I think by this point in the gaming space, like, we should all kind of press pause on whether or not we buy games until like a little bit more information comes out. With that being said, I am who I am, and I buy games pretty quickly. So I bought Crimson Desert. I'm gonna check it out. I'll have more, my own thoughts about this game when I do play it. Um, if you guys have any questions or anything you guys, want me to check out in the game, let me know down below. What are you guys' thoughts on a 78 Metacritic score? Is it, below expectation for you guys? Or is it right there in line? Or does it even not even bother you? All that stuff, comment section. You know what I'm saying? Like the video, subscribe the video, and I'm gonna check you guys out on the next one.